1848, I think, is really quite a crucial date for the American Civil War. It's always been a crucial date in some sense, that it's the date of the signing of the Treaty of Guadalupe, which Guadalupe Hidalgo, which ended the Mexican War, and the Mexican War sort of started the sequence of events that led to the Civil War in the U.S. But 1848 in Europe is the time of revolution, of nationalist revolutions throughout Europe. And those revolutions were watched very closely by Americans, and especially closely by Abraham Lincoln, who followed them closely. One of the key leaders who became world famous in the revolutions of 1848 was Louis Kossuth, leader of the Hungarian Revolution. And Lincoln wrote a testimonial to Kossuth for the Illinois legislature to commend him as one of the great representatives of political and civil and religious liberty. And I think that is a very important, suggests a very important connection. What these revolutions of 1848 in Europe were about were two things. One was freedom, and the other was nation. And there was a notion that the nation somehow was connected with freedom, that it was through the nation that these oppressed groups that were rebelling, and particularly those parts who were part of then the Habsburg Empire, later Austro-Hungarian Empire, and the Hungarians were the largest of those groups. They thought that securing modern freedom could be achieved through the nation state. So they had to get the nation state first to realize the freedom of citizenship and other freedoms. That, it seems to me, is exactly what the Republican Party and the Civil War were about in the 1860s. That is, that the nation would be the instrument of freeing, would be freeing the enslaved Africans, but incidentally also freeing up access to land for white laborers in the North. So there is a kind of ideological convergence between what's happening in 1848 in Europe. And when Lincoln says that a nation cannot stand as a house divided, half slave and half free, I think there's an echo in that of what people were saying in 1848, that the nation the modern nation state is being conceptualized at this time. Empires didn't worry about all kinds of differences within their borders. They didn't even worry about the borders. But the nation state is very anxious about its borders because it's the extent of citizenship. Sovereignty in empires belongs to the emperor or the monarch. In a nation state, it belongs to the citizens. And so who is and isn't a citizen is very important to nation states. And so they conceive of them as homogeneous. And so somehow that kind of notion of a nation divided was inconceivable. No one had ever said that before, that a nation divided can't continue. There had been a political problem from the beginning, and there were compromises in the Constitution and a sequence of compromises after that. But this absoluteness, that it's got to be one way or another, something the South shared as well as the North as an emerging conception, I think is a legacy of some of the language of 1848.